Now we turn to our Android Basics section, and we're going to talk about the next area of settings. We've been going through the settings app in quite some detail, and we haven't done that for a little while. But now we're going to return to that and talk about storage. And for this, I'm going to hand over to Warren.
So here we come to storage. So if you're following us or you've been following us for the past few weeks, we've been dealing with things from within the settings of your Android phone. And we took a little break from that and did other things, but now we return to our system settings again. And this time, though, we're talking about our storage. And everybody knows what storage is. So it could be whether on your SD card, if you have one that has an SD card, or particularly, we're talking about the internal storage of your phone. So, storages, guys, if we were to talk about the history of storage, it goes back, doesn't it? It goes way, way back, and how it was back then that little storages were seen as if it was limitless. It was so big back in the day. Because I'm thinking about things like Windows, how much storage those computers have, and then on our mobile phones, your Nokia phones, trying to install those screen readers or that screen reader, for example, installing Talks on either your Nokia 3660 or 3650, those things. So let's talk storage. And Ed or Fee, what are your thoughts about storage in general? To me, I think they are the backbone of every phone because that's where the system um, apps are located, your own installed apps are located. So without storage, there's no phone, right?
Yeah, I think that's really important to know before you buy a phone, especially how much storage it's got. Also, if you're buying a new phone, how much RAM it's got as well, because that's where the programs run. So the more of that there is, the more space they have to run without slowing down too much. And that's where Android sometimes has fallen down in the past, I think, and why some blind people and some sighted people have thought, oh, Android's no good for blind people, because they've tried it on lower end phones, and those phones haven't had very much RAM or storage. So talkback has been quite slow and choppy and not very responsive. So that has been a problem. I think things like that are getting better now because even the more basic phones have more storage. But back in the day, oh dear. I like phones with SD cards, although whether my next one will be able to have an SD card, I've no idea whether I'll be able to get those anymore in a decent phone. Phones are a bit annoying in that, for example, if I want to keep my Audible books on the memory card, I have to go to Audible and set that. If I want to keep my photos and videos on the memory card, I have to go to the camera app and set that, and so on and so on. And it's all very boring. And I wish there was a way you could say to your phone, um, store all media from apps on the memory card, for example. That would be good. But as far as I know, there isn't. So yeah, that's a bit annoying. But first world problems, not the end of the world, but slightly annoying.
Talking about storing, pictures on the memory card, though, I thought that some phones, though, automatically, once they detect that you have a memory card, then they'll store your stuff on there. I think Samsung does that out of the box if you have a Samsung phone that has an SD card. Unless, of course, if you turn the camera on without an SD card first, then of course you'll have to go manually change it to say, hey, now go back and put my things on the memory card. But I know phones that have SD cards, when you turn on the camera app or you launch the camera app, will auto detect that SD card and say, hey, I'll be storing your pictures on your memory card. Doesn't your Samsung do that, Fee?
Quite honestly, I don't know, because I think when I first got the phone, I made sure it would store it on the memory card anyway. So I don't use the camera very often. But I know with audio recording apps like HiQ MP3 Recorder, I had to change the storage location. This is what I mean. I'd really like it if when you put a memory card in, your phone said, "You've got a memory card. Would you like to store future media on the memory card?" And then you could say yes. And then it could say, "Would you like to transfer the media from your phone onto the memory card?" And then you could say yes or no. I'd like that. But it doesn't do that, unfortunately, as far as I know
Android
anyway.
storage now is absolutely horrible. I mean, why they have done what they have done, I have no idea. Google doesn't want apps to security breach other apps, and I sort of get that. But that's what iOS is for. That's what a wall garden exists for. What Google should have done is give users the power to circumvent this. But essentially, scope storage means that certain apps can only store things in certain folders, and that means your storage on Android phones is a complete mess. Like if you want to go find your Telegram stuff, that's going to be in a random folder of downloads. If you want to go find some other stuff, that's going to be a random folder somewhere else. If you had a Windows computer, obviously, you could point any media at any folder that you wanted. And I've no idea why Google has done this. It's a chaos. It's an absolute disaster zone, and they should not have done it. Storage on Android at the minute, scope storage is a mess.
Yeah, but no, we're talking general storage. So if we're talking scope storage, though,
I know, but storage is storage.
well, but in reality, like Fee, what you are saying though, that should be up to the developer of an app. In other words, if I put in an SD card, or if I launch, let's say I launch HiQ MP3 recorder, for example, the one you mentioned, if I launch that, it should, ask me, hey, I noticed that you have, an SD card. Would you like to do that? But then that's what the settings is for, though. You can go into the settings and choose where your media is stored.
But you can't.
So,
That's the point. That's what scope storage stops you from doing. You absolutely cannot do that.
No, you can't.
you should be able to.
No, you can't. Like Telegram downloads its stuff to its own folder on Telegram in downloads. You cannot change that. They have wrecked it. They have absolutely wrecked it with.
But here's the problem. But here's why you cannot do that is because the Telegram thing is stored in the internal storage, and so every app stores whatever in its own directory.
And it shouldn't be like that. Like
No,
in Windows,
I think you should have a choice. I agree with Ed. I think you should have a choice.
You should be able to override that. And nonsense, absolute nonsense.
You should be able to say, "I would like," to, when you download a file on the computer and it'll say, "Where would you like to save it?" That would be good.
Well, so see, I don't have a phone with an SD card, but I thought that WhatsApp, for example, like when it's downloading media, we're talking pictures here and basically, media, you could have it stored directly either in your gallery, or you could have it stored in the WhatsApp directory.
You used to be able to. Now you have scope storage, so you can't.
So is scope storage that's 11? Yeah, because mine is already doing it. And I notice whenever I download, for example, an email attachment, it just says it's downloaded. I have to then go and find it in downloads.
It's in downloads.
So annoying.
But you can always move those things to your SD card if you have an SD card.
I haven't got all day to be mucking about with settings and moving stuff. And
like, not all stuff goes to downloads because it's the annoying scope storage thing. So
yeah, but here's the other side of it, though, guys, that we're kind of overlooking, because it's a catch-22. Because if you let it happen, we have bad guys that take advantage of that and then cause all kinds of havocs out there. And so what do? Darn if I don't, and dang if I do, So
I absolutely don't mind it set as a default. What I want to be able to do, though, is override it.
Yeah, so. I agree with you, Ed. I think we should be able to do that. So there you go. In our ideal universe, we would be able to do that. But yeah, that's not how it is.
I see what you're talking about. I don't have a phone with an SD card, so
But even with
This
an
isn't SD
internal
card.
storage,
No, it doesn't matter. This isn't SD card specific. This is
no, even
this
in
is
an internal storage, you might want to organize your files a certain way, but you can't.
yeah,
Because
but Google wants to keep apps, stay where you're at. Don't go messing around and prying around
But it's not a
like
wall garden Android. That's
you
the
know
point. It's absolutely not a
putting
wall
putting
garden.
your tentacles all through the storage, and that's where a lot of these problems have come from, because of having access to places that you shouldn't have access to. An app shouldn't have access to my phone calls or my contacts if it has nothing to do with it. So, no,
That's my
seriously.
decision with the phone owner. You see,
No, so
so
see, I
Google should
see
not take
what
that
Google is
decision away.
doing. Yeah.
No, because Google is not a wall. Because Google's a crap wall garden, right? If we want a wall garden, it's Apple all the way. If Google tries to create a wall garden, it's going to be awful because it's not what it's done. It's coming from a forest where trees grow, and all of a sudden it decides it wants a wall garden. That's going to be rubbish. Everyone goes to iOS.
Well,
yeah, they will.
I
Everyone will
don't
go.
call it a
Wait, if
wall
I
garden.
They will. Absolutely, they will.
They will. They'll
Right.
say, if I wanted a wall garden, I'll get an Apple. So they're
Yeah,
just
because it's better
yeah.
for wall gardening. We don't want Google.
I
to
don't know
wall
what is better. How is it better?
because it's what it does. It was designed as a wall garden. Google was designed as a forest. All of a sudden, they've thought, oh, we need some walls in our forest. And walls in a forest are not as good as walls.
But a
as
forest is a wall. To be
No,
honest,
it's not.
a forest is a wall.
Gaps
Yeah,
between
because
all the
it
trees.
bars the wall out. That's
No,
a forest is a wall.
Forests shouldn't build walls. Right?
No.
No, I think I'm sorry, but I have to dissent on this, because I don't want apps, having willy-nilly getting access to
that's
directories that don't belong to them.
Well,
No,
don't
but what I
install them
absolutely-
then.
What I absolutely want to be able to do as a user is to allow whatever app I want to access whatever directory I want.
And quite honestly, if you're stupid enough to install a dodgy app,
Yeah,
and I think the Play Store should still check the apps. I agree with that.
No,
But
I
if
do
you
too.
but yeah, so it does that. That's a good thing. But if you sideload an app and it makes your phone go wrong, that's your fault. You just have to reset your phone. Like,
And also,
we
it
should be
goes-
allowed to make those mistakes.
I think so. And if it goes, are you sure you want it to access this folder? Yes, I am. Are you really sure? Yes, I am. Are you really, 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 really sure this is really stupid? I should still be able to click yes.
Yeah. And then if you screw up your phone, that's
my
your fault. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but
We're
some
not
some file
children.
managers already allow you to do that. Solid
They do.
Explorer, for example. Yeah, it
It
does.
will not. On Android 13, it will not allow you to access.
I have Solid Explorer on my Android 13, and I have it saving things in places that I wanted it to save it to. You have to make
other
it have
apps are
access.
saving things in other folders where I want to save them in different folders.
Yeah, you have to go in and move them afterwards, though, Warren. They won't. With your File Explorer, you can't change your default where your email attachments are saved or your Instagram, your Telegram.
Your email attachments will always go to your downloads.
Yeah, but I don't want that.
But Telegram
It has
downloads.
nothing to do with Solid Explorer.
No, exactly. But it's annoying. It annoys me. So there we go. We've had our rant for
And
now.
also, Solid Explorer won't write to the data folder.
Okay, so now let's look at the storage that we're talking about, because Fee, you brought up a very important thing here. When one goes to buy a phone, the storage is important. You got to make that decision as to whether or not you want a phone with a bigger storage, and most especially nowadays that a lot of phones are kind of like ditching that SD card. It kind of makes it very hard to have a little puny 16 gig phone running around with that, because the system storage, the system apps by themselves take a lot of space. For example, as I'll be showing here in a little bit, I'm using my Pixel 4, for example. The system apps is like 14 gigs. So if you have a 16 gig phone and your system apps taking like 5, 6, or 7 or 8 gigs, half of that storage is gone. And these days we have apps that are like by the hundreds of megabytes. And then with the constant updates, believe it or not, within a little time, you'll be running out of storage on that phone. And hence the reason why it's important. I mean, it sounds like I'm crazy, but I always go for the biggest storage that I can afford. And so I think that now the standard should not be anything less than 128 gigs of storage, guys. What do you think?
I agree. And although, I mean, I guess if you really did have a low budget, there should be an option to buy a lower one. But ideally, you'd want what you said, 128 gigs at least, ideally. But it depends what you want to do with your phone. I mean, if all you're going to do with it is ring people, send the odd text, maybe you'll use maps or something. If that's all you're going to do, I guess it doesn't really matter. But if you're like me and you love audiobooks and music and podcasts, your phone's going to get full quite soon with the small storage. So yeah, it really depends what you want to use it for, I think, as well.
Exactly. So if you have a 32 gig phone, for example, and 8 gigs is taken by the system storage and blah blah blah, so you're down. Unless, of course, not everybody have a lot of apps. I'm not looking from my own perspective here, but maybe if all you have is a few apps, maybe 10 apps or whatever, you probably should be able to live with that storage. And most especially, though, some of these phones, lower budget phones or mid-range phones, also a lot of them, I think most of them do have an SD card. I haven't found one that doesn't have one. Is there one that doesn't have? Unless, of course, you're buying a Pixel phone, that's not going to have an SD card slot. But other than that, most manufacturers that provide these phones will definitely have an SD card there. So if you're getting a phone that is a mid-range phone or budget phone, be sure that it has that SD card support, because that's very important. You can put some music and all of that books on there that Fee was talking about. I don't want to dump a lot of music and books on my internal storage, unless, of course, you have a very huge one. But then if you're going to reset the phone, then it becomes a problem. You have to back it up somewhere, and it's just time consuming. So frankly, whoever says we shouldn't be having this SD card, I don't know what he or she was drinking. That's my own opinion on the matter.
Well, the other storage, of course, that we haven't touched on yet nowadays that we have is cloud storage. But I'm always a bit dubious about it. I'm not saying I don't use it, because I do. And it's a great way to using things like Google Drive and OneDrive to, write something on the computer and then access it through your phone, or record something from something like HiQ MP3 recorder, and then you can edit it on your computer later on through cloud storage. But I don't like to rely on cloud storage as my only storage option, because what if something goes wrong with that server and you can't access it? I mean, that hasn't happened to me yet, but I'm always wondering, if there was a problem with the internet or a power cut or something. Also, if you, I travel quite often on the underground, and quite often it is what it says, underground. There's no signal for streaming cloud storage media underground. You get Wi-Fi in a lot of stations, but when you're actually traveling in the tunnels, no. So you would have to keep downloading your whatever document or whatever it is you're working on. So if it's on your phone or on your memory card, that's much better if you're traveling somewhere where there's no signal. Cloud storage, I think, has its place, but I don't think it should be seen as a replacement for a memory card like Google seem to be seeing it as.
The SD card is dead, folks. Sorry. Like, it's gone.
Well, it shouldn't be.
I know, but it is. And I know Sony, my phone manufacturer of choice, ironically, has an SD card, but it's dead. It's like the floppy drive when it was deprecated. It's gone.
Well, I'm waiting for the resurrection.
It won't happen. Like stuff doesn't get resurrected.
The SD card is not dead. It's only dead on some phones, but not on every phone. And most especially, like I said, there are millions of phones out there, especially the mid-range and low-budget phones. They all have SD cards, and so the SD card is
No,
not
not
dead.
Nokia will keep it. Nokia will keep the SD cards. Like the lower end phones will keep it, but for the flagships or the top end mid ranges, the SD card is dead.
Now, like which one? The Galaxy A53 that just came out has an SD card. So show me which of the
Yeah,
mid-rangers
that's a
that doesn't have an
mid-range
SD card.
that does, yeah, but the high-range ones,
They all
Ed's
do.
right.
So
But
all this
they,
cry about the SD card is dead is a
Yes,
poppycock.
I don't agree that
iPhone
it's
SE
dead.
2022 doesn't.
No, I
Which
don't
one?
agree that it's dead, but they
the
seem to have
Pixel-
taken it away from the high end, which
The
is very
Pixel
annoying.
5a doesn't have an SD
Yeah, but
card.
Pixel's never had
Oh no,
SD
Pixel
cards.
never had.
About
So forget
mid-range
about the
phones. You're
Pixel.
asking
We're
me
not
which
talking
mid-range
about the
phones.
Pixel
You're
phones.
asking me which mid-range phones do not have SD
No.
cards.
I'm
I
not
am
talking
telling
about
you
Google
which
phones.
mid-range phones do not have SD cards. The
No,
SD card is dead.
So let's not talk about Google, because even the very first
We're
Google
talking
phone
about
that I had
mid-range phones. We're
did
not
not
talking about manufacturers.
No, that's just a silly argument you are making.
It's
Google
not.
has never
The
had
SD card is dead.
SD cards.
I
And
don't
so
agree
when
with
I
you,
talk
Ed. I'm not
about
going to
this,
shout, but
I'm
I
not
don't agree
talking
with you.
about Google here.
Google have had SD cards.
No.
The Nexus 4 had an SD card.
I have the first phone that Google ever created. Guess what? It didn't have a headphone jack and it didn't have an SD card.
Four does.
No, it doesn't.
The which one?
The first phone Google ever put out, the HTC Dream or whatever, it never has an SD card and doesn't even have a headphone jack, for that matter. So I'm not talking about Google here. Google is clearly out, has never had it. I mean, Samsung tried to put it in one of their phones, and they said, let's not do that. It's gonna
Samsung had them for ages, actually. They had them in a lot of the Galaxies, certainly up until...
No. I'm talking about a phone they created specifically for Google.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry.
And then
I thought you meant the Galaxy ones.
No. We're talking about that Google that Ed is trying to argue that there's a mid-range phone. So that's not what we're talking about. When we're talking about mid-rangers out there, I'm excluding Google because Google has never been the one that gives us an SD card because they want us to buy stuff from them. So, but every mid-ranger out there, low budget out there has an SD card.
Except Google. Yeah.
Yes, close. Here is what I'm talking about. I don't know if you guys can hear this.
Storage, 86% used, 9.27 gigabytes free.
So this is a 64 gig phone, my Pixel 4, and it's at 86%. So I don't use this phone anymore as a main driving device because it was already saying, hey, I'm running out of storage, and I had to uninstall a lot of apps and things like that. So, but if you go in here,
storage, navigate up, button, out of list.
And you can look at the individual. Let's look at what we have here. We have
storage, navigate up, button, 55 gigabytes used, 64 gigabytes total, in list.
Okay.
Free up space, go to Files app to manage and free up space.
And, this is that files that Google used to have as a app for low budget phones. It used to be Files Go, but now it has become something that Google uses. And so if you don't have that on your phone, it will also have something that natively comes with Android, and also hence the reason why you're able to view these things. And
apps, 39 gigabytes.
So here, apps are 39 gigs. And if you tap here, you'll see how each app or how much of space each of these apps is taking. Let me show you, for example.
App storage, navigate up, button,
And
out of list. Google Play Services, 724 megabytes, in list.
See, that's Google Play Services.
Lookout, 773 megabytes. Google, 1.08 gigabytes.
That's Google.
Outlook, 529 megabytes.
So that's my Microsoft Outlook.
Phone, 528 megabytes.
So you see, these apps actually get big and bigger and bigger. And so let's go back.
System, 14 gigabytes.
See, my system apps are 14 gigs. Just imagine 64 gigs. So I'm down to 50 gigs out of the box. It's unbelievable.
Documents and other, 818 megabytes.
And
Videos, 197 megabytes.
Of course, because I'm not storing them on here.
Audio, 58 megabytes.
And
Images, 25 megabytes. Trash, 0B. Games, 0B.
And that's the last one, because I don't play games, so I don't have any of those. But if you have games and all of that, you see where I'm going with this. By the time that you are done, probably a lot of your space is getting eaten up. And this is what we're talking about. So you can go in here and you can see how your storage is being managed. And you can also, if you have your file managing system, you can go to where you could clean some of these apps that you don't want to, maybe the temporary files, so cache or whatever. One could go in there and clean those things without the need of using another third party or whatever, if that's what you want. But that's how we go in here to see that storage.
Thanks, Warren.